On behalf of the Black Prisoners Caucus, it is my honor to welcome you all here to Monroe, to the Black Prisoners Caucus 7th Annual Justice Reform Summit. My name is Kamani Carter, and I will be your MC for this afternoon. Our theme for this year's summit is to help us reestablish an ethical approach towards our criminal justice system. During the inception of the Black Prisoners Caucus, the criminal justice system was completely different than it is today. Although racial discrimination was rampant, prisoners were still looked at as people, and their criminality was looked at as an illness that needed to be treated. The philosophy was treatment-based. So they offered education, job skills, treatment programs, encouraged community, family involvement with furloughs, trailer visits, so that prisoners had the tools and the support they needed to return back to society as responsible citizens. And all of that was largely due to the fact that prisoners was under the care of the Department of Social and Health Services. Once the 1980s hit, politicians felt that treatment and parole was no longer a good use of public resources. And the only way that prisoners should be handled was to be stripped of all their privileges and to be punished for their crimes. The first policies in place eliminated parole. The Department of Corrections was created to replace the control of DSHS, and the determinate sentencing was now underway under the Sentencing Reform Act. Over the next 25 years, tough on crime policies will bring harsher punishments. Longer sentences will be imposed for minor offenses. Mandatory minimums will be established. 90% of all treatment programs, post-secondary education, and vocational trade skills will be eliminated. And earned time for good behavior will no longer exist. Under the SRA, it only took 10 years before we started giving life sentences to children and low-level offenders whose policymakers felt had already had 2 chances too many. As society has accepted that children are too immature to engage in certain activities. No 14-year-old is going to the polls next week to vote. No 16-year-old can buy a bottle of vodka from the liquor store. And no 13-year-old can get a driver's license. By law, they're all too young and irresponsible. But when it comes to punishing children for committing crimes, these same kids can be treated as if they're adults. All of a sudden, they're not too young and they're held totally responsible. They magically become adult citizens. This is an injustice.
When I was 14, a juvenile court judge decided that my case should be processed as an adult criminal matter. This meant that I'd be tried in adult court, and if convicted, I'd receive a sentence no different than an adult would for the same crime. I was convicted, and I was sentenced to life without parole. Over the 18 years I've been confined, I've watched our prison swell with other youngsters who, like me, are serving sentences for crimes they committed when they were juveniles. The entire U.S. Supreme Court agrees with the findings that there's a fundamental difference between juvenile and adult minds. Specifically, that the parts of the brain involved in behavior control continues to mature through adolescence, and teenagers, due to physiology, lack the capacity for adult moral reasoning. The Washington Department of Corrections has in its custody the youngest person on earth to ever be sentenced to life without parole. He was just 13 years old. He's now a 37-year-old man. I don't know if the legislature will ever establish a system of periodic review for youth sentences as adults, but I know this. When the theories and presumptions underlying our laws are proven false, those laws should change to reflect a new understanding of reality. And as for juveniles, the presumptions that supported treating minors as adults have been proven false. It's time for the laws of Washington to reflect this reality. Thank you.
I want to make one quick point before we go. As I was reading the excerpt about the American Psychologist magazine about the way the juvenile mind works, it reminded me of when the police were looking for me for the offense I'm in here for right now. And I'm from Seattle, West Seattle, and when the police were looking for me, I drove to Tacoma, and I thought to myself, they'll never find me out here. You laugh now, because that's how if you ask me what I was thinking of when I was 14, I can't even explain it. Because who would think like that except a child?
That's right.
And that's what you got in here for. I'm never getting out of prison. I'm going to die in prison for the act I committed when I used to think like that. That's just a fact. That's all I got to say.